Chapter 20. April. Carter, are you okay? April had not been expecting Carter to show up on her doorstep, and she certainly didn't know what to do with the haggard man who looked like he hadn't slept in a week. He shook his head slowly as if even that simple gesture pained him. "Can I come in?" April stepped back and allowed him entrance to her living room. Like a zombie, he shuffled toward the couch before sinking down into it. She shut the door and then crossed to the chair, wondering if she should repeat her question or simply give him time. He took a deep, labored breath and ran his hand down his stubbled cheek and across his chin, creating a soft, scratchy sound. She'd never seen him with stubble. "They're gone, April." She blinked at him, wondering if she'd heard him correctly. "They? Who's they, Carter?" He glanced up at her, shock and confusion filling his eyes. "My friends, the guys I was supposed to be with this weekend, their return flight crashed, and they're gone." April gasped, and her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my gosh, Carter, I'm so sorry." She hadn't formed the highest opinion of his friends after he told her they'd been the ones to pressure him to break it off with her, but she would never wish death on anyone. "I was with Jefferson when I found out. He told me that God has a purpose for me, and that's why I wasn't on that plane. I don't know what to make of that, but he also said that he has a purpose for us and the baby." April wasn't sure what to say to that either. Sure, she'd gone to church with Lucia this morning, but she was still undecided herself as to the whole God question and what to do about it. "I know I did you wrong," Carter continued, "but I honestly think maybe this baby was my wake-up call, that my life was going in the wrong direction. Whether we decide to raise it or put it up for adoption, I feel there's more to our story. Do you think we could try again? See where it goes?" April stared at the man across from her. She'd wanted him when he was cocky and sure. She'd wanted to be part of that flashy life. But now he seemed so different. Did she want what he was offering now? She thought back to just a few weeks ago. She'd been convinced they could have a future. And she still did care for him. But what if he bolted again? Could her heart take that? "I suppose we could try, but I can't make any promises, Carter." Carter nodded and stood. "I understand. I don't deserve it, but thank you. Our first game is next weekend. I'd really like it if you'd be there." April nodded. She'd wanted nothing more than to be at his games with him, but now it almost felt weird, as if his tragedy was bonding them together more than any connection they actually had. Surely that would get better, though. "I'll call you tomorrow," Carter said, before leaning in as if he was going to kiss her, pausing as if changing his mind, then finally deciding to kiss her cheek. As she watched him walk out of her apartment, she wondered if the tension that existed between them now would ever go away, and what she would do if it didn't. Carter's call came just as April was finishing packing up the last of her things at the chiropractic office. She still didn't have anyone lined up to lease the other 2 rooms, but she would be moving herself in today, and hopefully they would follow. "Hey, what are you doing?" Carter asked when she answered the phone. "Moving the last of my stuff into the new office," she said, tucking the phone between her shoulder and her ear so she could carry the box with both hands. "Oh, that sounds fun. Do you need help?" "Well, this is the last box, so I don't need any help from here. But if you want to meet me at the new place, I could use some help unpacking." "You bet. I'll grab some food and meet you there." "That would be nice. Just nothing with eggs, okay?" She'd never been a big fan of eggs anyway, but lately the smell had sent her stomach bunching and roiling. On the other end, Carter chuckled. Okay, no eggs. I don't usually eat them for lunch anyway. Are any sandwiches off the list? No, a sandwich should be fine. They hung up and April shoved the phone back in her pocket, said her goodbyes to her coworkers, and headed over to the new office building. Most of the new office was set up. She'd ordered the waiting room chairs a few weeks ago, as well as a computer for the receptionist desk. Now she simply needed to set up her massage room and find people to fill the other two. She figured she could work as the receptionist for the time being to save money, but she hoped eventually there would be money to hire one. As she had arrived at the office before Carter, she took a moment to check her email in hopes there would be some interest in renting the other rooms. Her heart jumped when she saw one email in response. It was only one, and there was no telling if the person would work out, but at least there was interest. Where there was one interested, there was bound to be more. She clicked on the email and began reading. It was another massage therapist, which wasn't necessarily a bad thing. Perhaps they could cover for each other if necessary. She had been hoping to broaden the services she offered, but at least this would be money coming in. A knock at the front door interrupted the mental pro and con list she was making in her head, and she glanced up to see Carter. Wow, the place looks good, he said, as she opened the door for him and he stepped into the waiting room area. Thanks. Now I just need to get clients sitting in these chairs. I have no doubt that you will. He smiled and held up the bags. Shall we eat or unpack first? Eat. I'm starving. There was no real break room in the office space, so they each grabbed a chair and moved it close to the receptionist desk. Then Carter pulled out a sandwich and a bag of Cool Ranch Doritos and handed them to her. I hope you like these. I never really asked. They were always my favorite. The smile that pulled at her lips was genuine. It was weird that they'd jumped to intimacy without knowing things like this about each other, but it was nice to see him thinking about her. It also didn't hurt that they were her favorite as well. You did great. These were always the ones I ate first, too. Then the cheese Doritos. He chuckled. It seems great minds think alike. What was the type of chips you ate last? Her nose wrinkled as she thought back to school lunches so long ago. The Cheetos. I didn't mind the puffy ones, but the crunchy ones always tasted like sawdust and left my fingers orange. We really do think alike, he said with a shake of his head. Those were my least favorite, too. I knew we belonged together. The words slipped out of April's lips before she fully processed them. She'd meant them to be teasing and light, but they hung in the air like a reminder of their situation. As Carter stared down at his sandwich, April wondered if she should say something more, tell him she was just teasing or something. But when he looked up, the serious expression in his eyes sent any words she had been thinking right out of her head. I've never done this before, but would you be okay if I prayed before we ate? April couldn't have said no even if she'd wanted to. There was something in the atmosphere between them that she did not understand, but she'd felt the same desire to pray the last few days as well. I don't mind. God, if you're there and you can hear this, then we just want to say thank you for this food and this office space for April. And, keep us safe. Amen. Sorry, he said, looking at her. I know that was rough, but maybe it will get easier. Lucia has always told me that it doesn't matter what you say to God because he sees your heart, but I'm sure it will. My prayers sound pretty similar. At least you're brave enough to say one out loud. I've only been thinking the words in my head. Well, I guess we can grow in this together then, huh? Maybe. April still planned to guard her heart a little closer this time, but Carter was certainly acting different than he had before.